All right, there we go. I got audio.
Okay. And how's your battery? Maybe we should plug you in.
Yeah, it should be. Oh, it's a different.
Oh, well, this should still work though. Is it nothing is struggling?
No, yeah, I was trying to. I didn't even know it worked that way.
Yeah. The only thing about USB-C.
Right?
Yeah. So no, I think you have to. Because start, yeah. People are still angry.
Yeah. Well, I'm recording on Zoom.
Yeah, we're both. Just go do this, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so what?
Well, these people.
Yeah, that's fun.
Well, perfect. Excellent. This is going to be like a mini workshop for all of you. That will be even better.
I will introduce Brian. How many people here know Brian Piper already? Right? He was here. He was one of our speakers last year. Did anyone see him last year about when it was about Drupal? Van Coy's him. Okay, that's great. He's also spoken pretty much internationally. He's a big rock star in the conference circuit. He also hosts a podcast, AI for You. So if you're in the higher ed space, you should definitely check that out. Even if you're not, you'll probably learn a lot. He also has this wonderful book called Epic Content Marketing for Higher Ed. It can only be found on brianwpiper.com, no Amazon. So head to his website. You'll get a lot of great content. And fun fact is he is also a skydiving instructor. So if you thought jumping into AI was scary, you know you're in good hands with Brian Piper because he is really great at getting people to jump out of the plane metaphorically and in real life. So without further ado, here's Brian Piper.
Thank you, Diane. I appreciate that. And great intro into the presentation. So I'm going to be talking with you about integrating AI into your institutions. This also works at the department level, the team level, even individually. This is a great way to start thinking about how to integrate AI responsibly, ethically, and for long-term success, because there are a lot of people that are integrating, like turning the tools on and giving them to everybody, and that's not the best way to do it. So that's what I'm going to talk about today. But first, I want to paint a picture for you. So I'm let's try this again. Oh, actually, I'll probably just gotta jump over to you. There we go. All right. Presentation. For the presentation. Don't disregard. Well, that's a first. All right. So I'm 13,000 feet above the ground, standing on the outside of the airplane, getting ready to let go. So, as Diane said, I've done this before. I've been a skydiving instructor for the last 25 years. I've been jumping out of planes for 35 years. I've got over 3,000 jumps, and more than 700 of those are either with people strapped to the front of me or with me holding on to people jumping for the first time. So I've got some experience dealing with people facing some uncertainty and anxiety. But this time was different, because this time I was looking back in the door at my daughter, who was getting ready to jump. And it was at this moment right here where she turned and looked at me. We locked eyes. And for just a second, I saw the panic and desperation in her face. And I couldn't let her know that I was feeling the same thing. I mean, this was my baby girl, right? I spent the last 18 years doing everything I could to protect her from situations like this and to help alleviate fear and anxiety. But I knew she had all the tools that she needed. Her training was comprehensive. We had gone through every possible scenario she might encounter and how to deal with it. And then with a nod and a ready, set, go, we left the plane, and she did great, because she was prepared mentally and physically. She had taken all those little steps she needed to take to get her to the door. Completely disregard that, like it's not even happening.
Fun recording.
How long do you think it lasts? In my time. So how long do you think it takes to evacuate a building that's been? They can't keep the alarm going the whole time. It's going to start again. All right, moving forward. So we face fear and uncertainty all the time in our jobs, especially these days. And most of that comes from one thing, and that is change. So we are facing more change, especially in higher ed, than we have probably ever faced, between AI, between the shifting administration, between demographic cliff. We have all sorts of challenges that we are facing. And we have to figure out how to face that change in a way that we can continue to move forward. Because without change, there's no growth. But we have to face that change in a way that can overcome the fatigue that we feel from constantly having to change and scramble and adapt. So I'm a content optimization and AI integration consultant. I wrote up content marketing for higher education. I have the AI for You podcast. The link goes to my LinkedIn page. If you connect with me today, I will send you all the resources from this presentation, the deck, all the prompts we're going to talk about, all the resources and tools. And I'll put this up at the end as well. 20% of higher education institutions have some sort of published guidelines around AI usage. So it's a pretty small number consistently, but 90% of institutions have put out some sort of AI initiative. Like either people have to start using AI, people have to start figuring out how to put it into their workflows, or we've just turned on tools and now you have access. So now you should just magically know how to use all those tools and be able to integrate AI. So there's a disconnect there. So we're going to talk about different ways to connect those two things. 34% of staff members that were surveyed said that their institution's stance on AI would likely impact their likelihood to stay. So we know that employee retention is a problem in higher ed. People find other jobs. Most institutions or most industries tend to pay higher than higher ed. So interesting statistic, even more shocking when you look at the fact that that was only 1% last year. And the speed and rapid advancement of AI indicates that this is going to be considerably higher next year. Now, this is just for staff. So imagine all of your students who know that when they go out into the workforce, they're going to need to know how to use these tools in almost every job they're going to get. If we're not training our students, if we're not integrating AI into our teaching and learning, we're doing our students a disservice. We face a lot of hurdles as institutions, right? Budget constraints, right? We don't have more money to spend on putting AI, on giving everybody access to all these tools. Our technical infrastructure isn't ready for this. Our data isn't clean. We know these tools need clean data to be able to run efficiently. We don't want our data to get out. We don't want to put our student data into these tools and have it get out to train these models. Our staff isn't ready. People aren't prepared. And even the people that might be prepared are resistant to start using these tools, especially when you start looking at faculty usage of these tools. A lot of faculty, especially tenured faculty, are like, taught the same way for 30 years. Why should I change? AI integration is not just a technology adoption project. AI integration is a change management project. You have to change the way people think about using these tools. This is not just another tool that's being added to your stack that you now have to learn how to use. You have to change the way you think about collaborating with these tools. You have to understand how the tools work. You have to understand the risks of using these tools before you can just turn them over to people. We face an adoption paradox in higher ed. We have staff and we have students who are eager to learn these tools because they know it can help them do their jobs. It can help them learn faster. It can help them figure out what they're going to need to know when they go into their next job. This is the ultimate professional development. And then you have leadership, and you have deans, and you have faculty who do not necessarily want to learn these tools. So that creates a lot of these shadow AI implementations where you have people using the tools in secret because they don't know what they should actually be doing with these tools and how they should be using these tools. So I want you to meet Devin Ferguson. Does anybody know Devin? So Devin last year was named the AMA Emerging Marketer of the Year. He is one of the most positive, happy people I have ever met. He is the best hype man for anybody. Once he gets to know you, he will say nothing but great things about you. He's the kind of guy you want standing next to you all the time. He's going to say how great you are. So Devin's the executive director of marketing and student care at Forsyth Technical Community College. And back in 2022, he was trying to figure out a way to help his team and to help students more effectively. They were fielding a lot of calls. They were spending a lot of time on the phone, talking with students, answering questions. And a lot of them were very common questions. They tried putting the answers to those questions up on the websites, but students were still calling. So they decided they were going to play around with some chatbots. So they tried out some AI chatbots. They integrated those. They trained them. They worked with them internally on their team. And then they started using them in their outward-facing student-focused pages. And they saw amazing results very quickly. So in the 3 years that since they started, actually in the first year that they used the tools, they found a 30% drop in incoming calls and 79% of student inquiries were handled by the AI. That freed up their staff to do more human-to-human contact, to go and answer those deeper questions, to spend more time out with the students, connecting with them and talking with them. Over the 3 years that they've been using these tools, they've saved 183,000 minutes. So that's a full person's full-time for a year. So that's one full-time employee for a year worth of time that they saved just by integrating these tools. Their enrollment has risen every year since they've been adopting these tools because it gets the answers to the students faster. It's 24/7, so they don't have to wait for the call back in the morning from the staff member to answer their question. So we're going to talk really quickly about the steps for successful AI integration. So I work with a lot of different institutions trying to help them figure out the best way to establish AI integrated into their processes for long-term success. And it all starts with awareness and alignment. You have to educate people about what the tools can do, what the capabilities are, how they can use them, and how they can integrate them into their work responsibly and ethically. We're not trying to replace people's jobs. We're trying to make your jobs easier, to give you more time to do the strategic, critical, creative work. And then you have to create governance, right? Once you give people guidelines and guardrails, then all of a sudden they start talking about what they're doing with the tools. Until you say it's okay to use these tools, here are ways that you can use them. Here are questions you should ask, and here's data that you should not put into these tools. Until you tell people that, they're just going to be using them themselves in their office. If you tell them they can't use the tools, they're just going to be using their own versions of the tools on their phones or on their personal computers. And then you have to start piloting projects. You have to find projects that are going to be quick wins and start running those and learning from those and tracking those. Once you've identified pilot projects, figured out what really works, then you can start scaling those. And then the real key is when you get to that moment of culture shift, where now people are integrating these tools into their existing workflow processes, right? Typically on pilot projects, we'll see anywhere from like a 10 to 40% time savings on tasks that you're already doing. Those are mostly on content creation tasks. When you look at data analysis tasks, we tend to see a 60 to 80% reduction in time spent on those tasks once you integrate AI. The culture shift happens when you switch from efficiency to innovation. So efficiency is like the 10 to 40% savings because you're doing the same tasks. You're just letting AI help you do it more efficiently. The innovation tends to be a 10x because now you're thinking differently about the actual work you're doing. What are your goals? What are you trying to accomplish? How can we collaborate with these tools to work differently? That's where you really start seeing rapid improvements. So it all starts with awareness and alignment. So how do you get started with that? How do you start educating people? The first thing you do is you identify your enthusiasts. Find people on your campus, on your team, who are already using these tools. They're out there, right? You pull those people together and you start having conversations. How are you using these tools? What are you doing? You start running these individual explorations and pilot projects. So when I first started using these tools, I was experimenting on my own with the work that I was doing. I did 3 months worth of work in 1 week on some data analysis that I was doing. I went to my boss. I said, look at what we were able to accomplish in a week. This is work we would have never done before because it would have taken too long. So once you have those use cases, then you can make a proof point to leadership to get buy-in. So once I told my boss about this, she's like, okay, you can set up that AI council that you were talking about. You can start getting people together. We can start figuring out how to integrate this because other people need to be doing this as well. Then you need to get to the governance stage, right? So once you get to the point where you've got a group of people together, you know people are already using the tools, then you need to start setting some rules around how you can use those tools, what you should and shouldn't be doing. So the first step is forming some sort of council or committee because governance needs a council, right? It's higher ed. We got to have our councils. We got to have our committees. We got to have people laying down some rules about how to use the tools. We started off by doing an anonymous survey. We had 300 marketers on the campus. This was when I was at University of Rochester. We reached out and we found out that 20% of people were already using AI every day in their work. So that was a great proof point to be able to take to leadership and say, we need some guidelines around this. And they were like, why don't you want to create AI policies? We're like, well, AI changes too quickly. We don't want to have to keep going back and updating policies because that takes a long time. We have a bunch of policies. We have data classification policies. We have content policies already. Those policies still work. Those are still the same. You can't put sensitive data up on social media. You can't put sensitive data into these AI tools. But we need to let people know that those policies still work for AI. And then you need to create guidelines. You need to create a roadmap, a long-term and a short-term roadmap. You need to identify use cases, create a community. So at the university, we created AI Hangouts where once a month, We would just open it up and anybody could come join, and we would just talk about new things that were happening on the AI landscape, new ways we were using these tools, new use cases, and then start identifying pilot projects, start identifying places where you can start integrating these tools in a way that you know are going to be successful and measurable. So once we formed our AI committee, we were able to do all of this in 3 months. So once you have a group of people who are enthusiastic about the tools, you can move forward very quickly. We identified all of those, we created our guidelines, we discovered along the way, as we were talking to different people across the institution, there was already an AI council that none of us knew about, because it was just led by IT, and they were basically just telling leadership, put the brakes on. We're not ready for this. There's data problems, there's security issues. And so once we joined the AI council, they were all like, how'd you get all of this done in 3 months? So we were able to provide the framework that they used. So then there were 5 different domains in the council. There was administrative, research, clinical, because we had a healthcare system attached to us, and then academic, and then marketing, which eventually became administrative. And then there was IT. So once we joined the council, and IT was like, oh, well, looks like somebody else is actually, taking leadership on this. All those other teams were able to create guidelines for each of their individual units. And all of a sudden, more people across the entire campus started figuring out, oh, we can use these tools. We do have access to some things. Let's talk and figure out how we can use these effectively. So then we really got into pilot projects. So the shadow AI goes away when you create these guidelines and guardrails for people to start using these tools. And then you start really thinking about, where do you start? Where do you start integrating? Because we were all doing our own little things, integrating into our workflows, but then we had to start looking at larger workflows, department level workflows, school level workflows, and where can we make sure that we're going to start off with projects that are going to get results? So measurable results, improvement in time, improvement in performance. And then once you get some pilot projects going, you get some results from those. So we ran our pilot projects as 3-month projects, where the first month, basically, we were doing measurement. We were looking at an existing process that we already had. We started off with 4 different pilot projects. 2 of them were content creation projects. 2 of them were more data analysis insights projects, reporting projects. The first month, get your baselines, figure out how long it takes you to do the project. The second month, get people to start using these tools, figure out where the tools are going to plug into these processes. And then the third month, measure how much time it takes to do these projects using AI. Then you can go to leadership and say, here's our time savings. We save 40% of our time in our newsletter creation process. We save 20% of our time in our feature story writing processes. We saved 60% of our time in our monthly reports that we were doing. Then leadership is like, oh, time savings, revenue savings. All right, let's figure out how we can get on board. Then let's get legal involved. Let's get IT involved. Let's figure out what tools we can actually get access to, and start figuring out how we're going to scale this, how we're going to make this institution-wide. And then at this point, we need to start exploring internal solutions. So we were at this point, we were using ChatGPT and Claude and some, all the different large language models, the public tools. But we knew we had student data that we wanted to put into these systems. We had healthcare data that we wanted to put into these systems, patient data. So we knew that we were going to have to start figuring out how IT or a third party could come in and help us build an on-site solution so that we could protect our data. That's one of the things that legal and IT was very, focused on. So University of West Florida had a problem with student admissions, and so they decided they were going to integrate an AI student recruiter into their admissions policy for their graduate students as a pilot project. So they did that and saw a 32% increase in the admissions because it was faster for students to apply, faster for the processes for the applications to be approved, to match them up with the right programs and the right admissions officers. And so then, Once it was integrated, once they had the results, once they could see the benefits, then it was easy to figure out, okay, now we need to scale. Now we need to figure out how to move forward with this. So when you think about scaling, the first thing you have to do is identify those opportunities. So you've already got a bunch of pilot projects you've run, you see the results of those, you figure out which ones of those you're going to continue to expand upon. And then you have to prioritize ones, which are the most relevant, the highest ROI, the least risky to start with. Lots of different ways to run that kind of 2x2 matrix to see return versus risk as far as prioritizing those. And then you need to provide tools and resources to teams so that they can move forward with those. University of Tulsa created Goldie, which was to help them with their admissions and enrollment. They were having a problem with students not getting the academic advising that they needed before the enrollment period. They weren't having the enrollments weren't, the admissions weren't happening on time. Everything was like right down to the wire. So once they integrated this chatbot, more students were being matched up with the right advisors. More students were getting advising from the chatbots initially that was helping them before they went to their human advisor and got approved, all of those. So most of their students were actually advised before the enrollment period ended. And then more students enrolled before finals started. So they had hit those goals, but not as early as they hit them. So it helped alleviate a lot of stress on their end. They had a lot more opportunities done once they put those in. So I mentioned before, AI is change management, right? There are two kind of change management formats or structures that work very well with AI, but you kind of have to use both of them because you have to have top-down integration. You have to have leadership support and buy-in before you can integrate. So the first thing you do in this top-down method is create a sense of urgency. Present to your leadership. Let them know that your peer institutions are doing this. Other schools are doing this. If you want to stay relevant, AI is here. It's not going away. Let's figure out how to start integrating this. AI is moving so quickly. If we wait till next year, we're going to be playing catch up. I worked with an organization when I first went in and started working with them. They said, we want you to help us come up with a 5-year AI plan. We don't know what's happening in 1 year with AI. Let's get moving now. We'll come up with a 6-month plan. We'll come up with a 1-year plan where we want to be, and then we'll readjust and reevaluate from there. Build this coalition, right? Get this AI council together. Start having these conversations at leadership level across the institution. Create that strategic vision. Create that roadmap. Figure out where you want to go. What are you going to need to accomplish to get the most out of these tools? And then find this volunteer army, find these enthusiasts, find these people who are interested, find these people who recognize the value of these tools. Give them access to the tools. So a lot of institutions we would go and they're like, we can't give people access to ChatGPT. They're going to put sensitive information in there. They're going to put student data in there. Like, we'll train them not to. Help people will follow rules. People know not to go post student information on social media. Tell them not to post that data into these AI tools. So a lot of institutions I work with, IT is like, no, we can't give people access to ChatGPT. I was like, here's the use case. Here's how they're going to use it. Here's the data that they're going to put into it. We have trained this group of people, give them access to the tool. So instead of having to go through your normal software approval process, which can take months sometimes, they made special exceptions for AI software approval, where for specific use cases, you could get approval for specific tools for specific people. And then generate those short-term wins, right? Leadership needs to see results. So figure out where you can show results quickly and where they can see those short-term wins. And then figure out how you're going to sustain that, right? Here's a long-term plan of how we're going to do that. And then really think about the culture shift that you're going to need, right? Get people talking about AI, create these AI hangouts, create spaces for people to share information. And then the other method is bottom up, right? Because you have to convince those people who are frontline employees, the staff members, right? Who are already busy, who are already wearing 3 or 4 different hats. They're like, I don't want to have to learn a whole new tool. I don't want to have to learn. I don't want to train an intern, right? Everybody's like, talk to it like it's an intern. I don't want to train an intern, right? They take a lot of time away from me. But these are interns that you can train that will work 24/7 for you. And once you get them trained, you don't have to retrain them. They're not going to be gone at the end of the semester. They're going to stay there. They're only going to get better. They're going to get smarter. So create the awareness, show them, give them some quick wins. I love coming into a team, figuring out what their roles are, what they do every day, and then making a custom GPT for them that saves them a couple hours every week. Super easy to do, really quick wins. And all of a sudden they're like, oh, all right, this isn't too bad. This isn't too hard. This does help. Create that desire to learn, right? Show them how it's working in other institutions. Give them access to training. There are tons of amazing training resources out there. The problem is there's so many training resources out there that you don't know which ones are good or which ones aren't. So find some good ones, give them access to those, and then make sure that they have the ability to use those tools. They have access to the tools, that you create an environment of openness, and then you reinforce, constantly come back. So when we run these pilot projects, the whole second month is basically coming back and checking in. Did you use the AI tool today that we showed you? What did you think? What did you learn? How did it work for you? What results did you get out of it? UC Davis has done an amazing job of creating kind of this culture within the institution by creating these communities of practice, by creating the opportunities for people to share knowledge and share information. They ran a whole summit that was just their AI community of practice, bringing all these people together, bringing in outside experts, talking about opportunities, capabilities, what other organizations are doing. AI has become a tool for inclusivity because AI helps create conversations across different areas of the institution. So, right, we know silos, right? We're higher ed. We have lots of silos. We started having these conversations in our AI council where we were talking with the academic teams about what they were doing and how they were using these tools within their classroom. So they were creating virtual TAs so that students could ask questions 24/7. In marketing, we were like, well, why don't we create virtual personas that we can ask questions about our content? It was amazing. It gave us all sorts of insights. And you really want to make sure that you have responsible AI governance. So not just how you use these tools, but when don't you integrate AI, right? What if you have a process that creates more opportunities for human connection? Maybe that's not something that you want to replace with AI. What if you have parts of your workflow that you really like doing? Maybe you don't need to automate that, but you have to have these conversations and you have to look at things as you're automating them along the way. AI is not only in the operation side, but also in the education side, and having those open conversations between those two different groups is critical. So when you look at the roadmap for implementation, right, that foundation, the awareness, the education, the training is the first step. Building your capacity, making sure that everybody sees what tools you need, what access you need, how you need to change your data structures, and then really creating that transformation and integration, right? Having those conversations, creating that culture of change, getting people on board, leadership and at the foundation level. And then really thinking about continuously talking about this topic because these things are changing so quickly. If you're not having conversations as groups about this, you're never going to be able to keep up with it because there's just too many things that are advancing all the time. Measure what matters, right? Don't just make the same, don't use the same measurements you're using now, right? Just like Dale was saying this morning in the keynote, don't just measure impressions and page views because AI is changing that, right? Measure conversions, measure admissions, right? Figure out what you're really trying to accomplish. What are your goals, right? What are your objectives and key results? And what key performance indicators are going to indicate that you're making progress towards those? Figure out what ROI really means, not just the same numbers and metrics that you've always been using. And then really start thinking about AI literacy. How do we train people to be better at using these tools and have that awareness about what they can do with them? Create training opportunities, give them access to training. There's tons of free training out there as well. And then really creating this sharing, creating this culture of communication around this. ASU is doing incredible things with AI integration. They're really leading the way. They started this AI Innovation Challenge 3 years ago. The first year they opened that up, basically they partnered up with OpenAI to give everybody, students, faculty, staff, everybody was going to get access to ChatGPT EDU. but they knew they had to pay for each of those individual licenses. So what they said is, pitch us, tell us how you're going to use these tools. The first pitch challenge that they did, they had over 1,000 people who entered different ways that they were going to use these tools. In the first year of integration, they launched over 550 different initiatives using those tools across their campus. They launched their communities of practice, and they created all sorts of custom trainings, workshops, tools, support networks. They had students and faculty that were creating these custom GPTs and sharing those with everyone. So now everybody has access to those. South Carolina State University integrated a AI-powered CRM. So 32% increase in new enrollment the first year that they ran it. Application completion rates improved, 24/7 availability for student questions, and then the admissions and counseling staff had a lot more time to actually do the more thoughtful, critical work, figure out better ways to integrate these tools into their processes. So lots of things, the future of AI, right? Agents, right? We hear a lot about agents, right? People are saying that agents are already here. Basically, an AI agent, the idea is that instead of just creating tools and tools to solve individual processes, to perform individual functions, these agents are going to be able to handle entire workflows. So you're going to be able to go into an agent and basically say, take all of this information I'm going to give you, synthesize that into a new blog post that's going to be SEO optimized, that's going to be AEO optimized, that's going to be focused on students, that's going to support our strategic initiatives. And then basically you will then just have to go in and figure out where you're going to spot check along that process. These AI agents aren't really like working very well yet, right? But everybody, all these foundation model companies are trying to create those because they know they're going to be a huge unlock. But I think the tools that we already have are already agents. So the definition of agents is very vague. But when you think about an agent, it's really about the level of agency, the level of autonomy in these tools. And over the past few years, we've gone from being able to create these custom GPTs that will do very specific processes and be able to do them very well. So you can create a custom GPT that writes in your brand voice. Pretty easy to train those. That's usually a quick win right off the gate. You can take a story that someone's written, throw it in there. You can take a web page, throw it in there, and it'll say, you need to change this because this isn't the way that our brand talks about this particular thing. Deep research, now you're getting some more agency because deep research will actually go out and figure out where to get the information and knowledge that you want to find. It will go out and do that and gather that for you and return that to you. But it's making decisions along the way of what information to give you based on what you ask it. And there are a lot of different tools out there to do automations with. So make.com, N8N, Zapier, these are all tools now you can start running these custom GPTs. You can start connecting these workflows together. You can integrate third-party tools, so you can call out to Salesforce or HubSpot. You can pull those pieces into your automations as well. And then chatbots have some agency because chatbots can turn a request over from one chatbot to another chatbot, or the chatbot can figure out when it can't answer a question, so it can bring a human into the conversation at that point. But then where we're really going to start seeing some improvement is in the next year, we're going to start seeing some of these workflow agents that are going to come out, where basically you just go in and say, I want to do a check here and a check here, and you do all the work in the middle. But to be able to make these workflow agents happen, you're going to need to know those processes. You're going to need to document your processes along the way. And a great way to get started with that is by creating these custom GPTs. Because when you create these custom GPTs, you're going to have to say, well, what does it take to make my content SEO optimized or AEO optimized, GEO optimized, whatever you want to call it, right? What are the steps involved? How do we actually do that? And then once you capture those processes and break them down, now you have them codified. So now when those workflow agents actually come to fruition, instead of having to go through that whole thing for an entire workflow, you can just say, when we're writing a piece of content, first here's the brainstorming agent. Connect that to the writing agent. Connect that to the brand voice agent. Connect that to the SEO agent. And then I want to review everything at that point. And then we're going to get to these autonomous agents where you're just going to say, go do this. And it's going to go do it. And then you're just going to have to check it. And then we're getting to these personal agents. So this is where instead of going and searching on YouTube to find an answer or going to search on Google to find an answer to a question, you're just going to open your phone or your glasses or your AI robot bird on your shoulder, whatever the next delivery method is going to be. And you're just going to ask it the question and it's going to dynamically generate the content for you on the fly, focused on your specific needs. We think a lot of times about B2B, B2C marketing, right? We need to start thinking about B2A marketing because we're going to be creating our content to be consumed by these agents and delivered to people outside of our content environment. And then eventually we're going to get to the A to A space where we're putting in the strategy, the goals, the users, the data, and then our agents are going to create that content. And then the users are going to be asking the questions to their agents on the end of that. So we have to figure out how to make sure that our content is ready to be delivered and optimized so that it shows up when people ask those questions. And then we have to think about discoverability, because in this day and age, distribution equals discoverability. Because people are searching differently, especially Gen Z and Gen Alpha, right? They're not just going to Google anymore. They're searching on social, they're searching on communities like Reddit, they're searching using voice, and they're searching using AI. And we have to have our content in all those places optimized for those audiences on those channels. But we're higher ed, right? We don't have resources for that. We're already strapped just to get our content on the channels we're already delivering it on. How are we going to get our content everywhere? AI is really great at repurposing, redistributing, and retargeting content that we already have. You can go into ChatGPT, take a news story on your website that's working really well, throw that in there. This is original human-created content, right, that's already been vetted. And then you say, I want you to turn this into 5 different TikTok scripts focused on potential undergraduate students. Boom, it'll spit those out in your brand voice. And then you take those scripts, look through them, figure out which ones are really good or not. Give those to your student interns because no one wants to hear from some 50-year-old guy why you should come to our institution, right? Not on TikTok, at least. And then have them take that and put that into their own words. So now it's being authentically delivered from someone that they're interested in hearing from on the platform where they're searching for that content. So that's just one way to repurpose. Now, when you repurpose, you often need other assets to help you with that. So if you need an image to go along with your content, you can use these text-to-image tools. There's a ton of these out there. They're amazing. You just tell it what image you want it to create. Images that are 100% AI created cannot be owned. They cannot be copywritten. So you have to be careful about how you're using it. You have to think about who's consuming these images. Sunio Nianto, when everybody was doing the AI action figures, thought it would be a great idea to create an AI action figure of their mascot. The students hated it because they were like, we have design students. Why aren't you using our design students to create this? Why are you outsourcing this to AI? You have to think responsibly about how you're using these tools. But there are great use cases. So for this presentation, I wanted an image of a yield sign with a school in the background saying, slow down if you're integrating AI. You have to think about the risks. You have to think about the capabilities. But I am not a designer. I didn't want to spend a bunch of time going out and looking for that clip art. So I just sketched this out. See, not a designer, right? Sketched this out, threw this in Gemini, told it what I wanted. Within a minute, I had this image, right? And these tools are very powerful. So now what I was able to do was say, there are tools for repurposing long-form video. So you can take a 45-minute video, dump it into Opus Clip. It will dynamically go through that video, figure out what the most important sections of it are, pull those out as 30 to 60-second clips, convert them from horizontal to vertical, and put your text overlays on them immediately. So within minutes, you can have 10 to 15 different short clips that you can go out and reuse on, Reels or Shorts or TikTok. Descript is a great audio video editing tool. So it can actually heal audio. So if you're doing an interview with someone and the audio drops out or a truck drives by, you can actually train the tool on a clean piece of audio, go into where the audio dropped out, type in what the person said, and it will sync that up to their mouth movements in their voice. It can force eye contact with the camera. So if someone's reading off a script, it'll make it look like they're looking at the camera. It can dynamically remove filler words and then stitch the video together so you would never know it was there. They added the capability a couple months ago to do avatars. So now you can create an avatar, you can throw your script in there and the avatar.
Hello, I'm Pat, and I'm your primary target audience. I'd like to tell you a little about your content and how you might make it more relevant for me.
So great, you have your target audience delivering ideas about your content to your leadership. If you really like these avatars, you can use a tool like Hey Jen to train it on video of yourself. And then you can just put in a transcript and it will say that in your voice with your natural movements.
I'm so excited about the new capabilities and opportunities
I have a friend who does AI courses online. And the problem with doing AI courses is that every 2 months they're out of date. So she was having to reshoot and re-edit and update the videos. So then she trained AI avatars on herself. She had hours of herself giving these videos, giving these courses. And now when she needs to update those, she just goes in and types the new information in there and it puts it in her voice. And now this tool, Hey Jen, can also do translation. So now I speak German.
Ich bin so aufgeregt über die neuen Möglichkeiten.
And Spanish.
Estoy muy emocionado por las nuevas capacidades
And Korean.
이러한 이제 생성 AI 도구들이 우리에게
I don't speak any of those languages, but I love watching myself speak Korean. If you're using a tool like this to do translation, make sure you're transparent about that, because you don't want your students coming to your campus and expecting your president to speak Korean if they don't, right? Let people know when you're using AI. That's the fastest way to lose trust with your audience, is to let them think that you were trying to fool them into not knowing that what you were doing was AI generated. Runway is a text-to-video tool. These tools have gotten so much better in the past 2 years. It's really incredible what you can do with them. Basically, you just tell the tool what video you want it to create, and it will create it. So as you're watching this clip, remember that none of the places are real, none of the people are real. This is not CGI. This was just a prompt that somebody typed into the... I won't put through the whole thing because that was so 9 months ago. 6 months ago, Google came out with Veo 3. Now you have the capability to add dialogue into your videos. So you can see down here the script that was used to create this video. So a college professor teaches a class on Gen Z slang and the video pans over to all the boomers taking notes.
Okay, so Riz is basically short for charisma.
Got it.
And that's a verb as well.
How will you know who to trust?
Boomers will believe anything I say.
I will sell you everything.
Every business will use me.
I can be whoever you want me to be.
I am as real as you make me.
I'm just words some guy is typing to get a point across.
The old internet is dead. Oh!
Panic is spreading worldwide tonight as the arrival of the unidentified vessels triggers states of emergency across every continent.
I broke into a zoo to prove one man is enough to fight a gorilla.
Welcome to the Chernobyl challenge. I'm gonna lick this glowing pole. Let's see how many views this gets.
Right? Pretty incredible. So 6 months ago. 3 months ago, OpenAI launched Sora 2. So now you can put yourself in any video.
You can't trust content in the digital world. You have to find people you trust.
So incredible capabilities. You can do amazing things with these tools. You can do some very high value, very strategic, focused content. Do some very important videos with these tools.
You sure do love those tacos.
You can eat tacos with 10 otters at a table, right? So great capabilities. You have to be very careful how you use this, especially in higher ed, right? If you need some B-roll, great, right? If there's other, but these tools are going to become more and more integrated into our processes, into the capabilities that we have. Important that people understand the capabilities of these tools. If your crisis communications team does not have a plan for when your faculty or leadership starts getting deepfaked, they need to, because it is already happening. There are already schools whose faculty and leadership are having videos of themselves made saying things that they never said. So the last tool I want to talk about is Notebook LM. This is a fantastic tool. Basically, you can upload all sorts of resource documents into this tool, and it can analyze all of those different documents and give you summaries of what information is in there. Super easy to use. You just create a notebook, you load it up with resources. The free version, you can put in up to 50 different resources. The paid version, you can put in 300 different resources. This can be data, this can be reports, these can be all sorts of institutional information. And then you can just have it output all sorts of summaries about that information. It can do mind maps about that to help organize all of that data together. It can do flashcards. If you need to learn something, you can dynamically generate those flashcards and quizzes. And then if you've heard of Notebook LM before, you've probably heard about it because of the audio overviews that it can generate. So it generates a 2-person podcast talking about your resources. And you can actually now tell it what you want the host to focus on in that content. And you can decide if you want them to debate about that, or how long or how short you want that to be. And you can actually even call in live during the podcast and redirect the conversation that they're having about your tool.
Imagine a tool so powerful, it basically went from nowhere to being used by nearly half of all college students for schoolwork, like in less than a year.
Yeah, it's kind of mind-blowing.
And then you've got the institutions, the universities themselves, still scrambling to catch up, trying to figure out how to even manage this huge shift.
It's a fascinating story, and it's unfolding so fast. Oh, wait, someone wants to join. Hey, go for it.
I'm wondering if you can jump right into some of the biggest challenges that institutions are facing when trying to integrate AI.
That is a fantastic request.
We can absolutely do that.
So let's talk about those.
Very interesting different ways that you can use these tools. Several institutions that I'm working with are taking their newsletters that they're sending out. People don't want to just read through the newsletter, so now you can generate a podcast about the newsletter. A lot of times it'll just give you a different perspective on the information that you put in there as resources. So we talked about agents, we talked about discoverability. So where does the human fit into all of this? There's a wonderful tool out there called Jobs GPT. So you can just go into the OpenAI GPT, or you can just search on Google. You can search for Jobs GPT. Basically, you can put in any job title or job description, and it will break down that job by all the tasks that you perform and show you how much time AI could save you with each one of those tasks. You can also ask it what your job might look like in 2 years based on the speed of AI advancement. And it'll give you all sorts of information about, you might be managing several AI agents in the future instead of doing your typical job. A lot of times when I work with an organization, I'll take the entire department org chart and I'll put it into here and I'll say, what might this department look like in 2 years? So if you're hiring, you may want to change who you're hiring for, or what job skills you're looking for in the hiring process, because you might not need those in 6 months, or you might need different skills in 6 months. It can give you information about what you might want to think about upskilling yourself, how you might want to upskill yourself so that you're more relevant down the road. So we don't know what's coming, right? Things are changing so quickly, it's very difficult to predict. One thing that we do know is that the more you can separate your content from your delivery platform, the better off you're going to be. So think about like headless CMSs, right? Websites are going to differ, right? Websites are going to change. If you're not thinking about the future of your website in this agent to agent kind of framework, you're going to end up being behind. You're going to end up scrambling to try to make sure that your content is set up in the right format. So start thinking about how you can create your content in a way where it's student first, it's goal first, content first, and then think about platform. Think about ways you can store your content in a place where it's not tied to a specific delivery method. So I got one final story to finish up with, but I think we do have time for a couple of questions. If there's any questions. No questions. Answered all the questions.
Do you have any agent workflows running or anything on any projects now, or just like the stuff that you can do all separated?
No, so I have automations and custom GPTs tied together. You don't really have any like agents that work as well as I would like them to work. So I have a website optimization process that I do. It's 6 different audits that I run to help optimize any institution's website. I've been using it for a decade. It works really well. Typically, it takes like 2 or 3 weeks the first time I run it. And then when I do it quarterly, it takes 2 or 3 days. Now I've got custom GPTs and automation set up for each one of the audits. And now I can do the whole thing in about 2 or 3 hours. That's right. Absolutely. And turn it around much faster. Now, most of my time is spent gathering the data to go into it and then validating the outputs. So, yeah.
Areas are the weakest things that universities should focus in on in terms of prioritizing like AI, where they need to spend so much time curating. My assumption, correct me if I'm wrong, is that like anything where you're putting in numbers, data, that's where you're going to see a lot of issues.
So if you're trying to get the AI to do math, it does not do a good job of that. Now, if you're trying to get AI to look at data and find insights, it does a really good job of that. So we see a lot of time savings on those content data analysis type tasks. But yeah, if you're trying to get it to like add data together or do financing, now there are other tools out there that are AI tools that are not trained as large language models. They're not generative AI tools that are really good at doing those sorts of things, more machine learning type tools. Yeah.
One example that we plugged in that speaks to what we just said, that was really cool. I didn't do it before, but we took our like application stage funnel. So we looked at like how many apps do we have who started, submitted, completed, admitted, deposited, and we asked ChatGPT to do kind of a projection analysis of how many students at this time, or how many people who we think we have will convert to students. Actually pulled really good, I don't know how it did it, but it pulled good. It matched our historical data pretty well, and so it gave us some really good projections on it.
Yeah, validating and knowing what output you expect from those tools before you ask it questions on projects like that is super helpful. Yeah. So here's the thing. None of us is really like ready for change, right? We have a lot going on until you actually step into it, right? Innovation is it's not a leap, right? It's a series of small steps. When my daughter jumped out of the plane that day, she wasn't fearless. She was ready enough. She trusted her training. She trusted her equipment. She trusted her instructors, and she jumped scared. The leaders of tomorrow are not the people who are asking, how do we integrate AI? They're the people who are asking, how do we make change feel safe? How do we help our people take those next steps? When we landed, when she got to the ground and she took off her helmet and her goggles, she looked at me and said, I didn't know the sky could look that different. That is the moment that we are in right now with AI. We have the opportunity to look at our workflows, to look at our world from a different perspective, and to shift the way we think about the work that we do. So change is the only runway that we're going to get, right? So we have to face this together. We have to face this intentionally. The question isn't, are you ready? The question is, will you jump? Thank you very much.
So much, Brian Piper. Well, we're now going to have lunch, which is being served on the third floor and the fifth floor, I think. So an hour break for lunch and networking.